Today on the Relationship Revival Show, I'm joined by guest Wendi Dumbroff. Wendi is a LPC, a licensed professional counselor in private practice, where she specializes in individual, family, couples, and sex therapy and provides a safe, non-judgmental, sex-positive environment. She's also a certified teacher of mindfulness and meditation, and I'm excited to have her on the show and talk about all of the above. So much to unpack here. You're listening to the Relationship Revival Podcast with John DeBach, also known as Mr. Spirituality. That's me. I'm your host, giving you insights and guidance from over 10 years in the field of this amazing journey we call romance. On this show, I go over everything you need to know about how to get into a relationship, how to get the most out of a relationship, and sometimes even how to gracefully end a relationship without pulling your hair out and going crazy. And occasionally, I'm even joined by new and old friends who are also relationship experts to bring you guidance and wisdom with new perspectives. Thanks for stopping by. Wendi Dumbroff, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me here today.
So there's a lot to talk about with you, and I always love to dive into topics that haven't been covered, at least on my show, as much. And one thing that, you know, in our kind of pre-interview back and forth correspondence that we discussed was going over patterns in relationships, kind of recognizing them, how to break patterns. And I'd love to just jump off and start right there and kind of see, you know, how does that affect the way you approach relationship and couples counseling?
Yeah, that's such a great question, because actually looking at what happens between people forms the core of the work that I do with couples, sometimes also with like parent-child. Anytime you have two people in relationship, I look at it systemically, not about, oh, you do this, and if you didn't do this, then, you know, I wouldn't do this, but more of like, what happens when you do this? What do I feel like? And then what do I do? And then how does that trigger you to feel more of what you do? And we get this self-sustaining cycle. So I listen the very first session when I work, for example, with a couple, I listen very closely and I ask questions around, oh, so you get upset when he, you know, stomps out and doesn't listen to you. Yeah, I really do. So I'm getting a cue there that one of the ways that this person copes is by exiting, by shutting down, by leaving.
Right.
And then perhaps when he leaves, she angrily pursues him. But the more she angrily pursues, the more he shuts down. And I use something called the vulnerability cycle, which really looks at what triggers you and what do you do, and how that thing triggers the other person, and then they do something that re-triggers you, and how there's this self-sustaining cycle that happens. And I draw it out for people. It's a beautiful cycle that was developed by Michelle Schenkman and Mona Fishbane, and like a few decades ago. And it really is amazing how much it applies to any interactional pattern between any two people.
And what's the magic secret sauce of breaking that pattern?
Yeah. So we can't change anything we're not aware of. So when you can show this to people and help them understand, like, okay, yeah, this is what's going on. This is the dance that you do with each other. I always say couples have one argument, right? The content doesn't matter. Underneath, there's the same process. I felt unheard. I go yelling and screaming to be heard. He feels anxious, worthless when I yell. He shuts down, and I'm being very sexist here, you know, the sort of, generic.
Just to use the archetypes. Yeah, sure. That's fine.
Archetypes. It's a good word. Yeah. And then the more he shuts down, the more I feel unheard, the more I angrily pursue, the more anxious and worthless he feels, the more he shuts down. So when people can see that dance, then it's about understanding those triggers, how they were formed. We do explore their early lives and their experience in their childhood growing up, significant experiences in adulthood as well,
Sure.
that form those triggers. And when they see that dance, then when they have that awareness, they have an opportunity to change, to make a shift.
Are you a practitioner, or did you study any EFT? Just because they use the word dance so much.
Yes, I have studied EFT as well. I'm not certified in EFT, but I've gone
Sure,
through some of the EFT training and I use many of the EFT skills.
sure.
The vulnerability cycle came before,
Yes.
long before EFT, and they're
Yeah.
very similar. The cycles are similar. The vulnerability cycle, I think, is a little more expansive. It
Okay.
is, it is, and it's a model that's, I think, it. Somebody else may say no. For me, this works. It's like some people
Sure,
use
sure.
sriracha, some people use some other kind of hot sauce, right?
Yeah.
Um, so this kind of works for me, and I think it's helpful for people can understand the model easily,
Yeah.
and understanding like how it is that they feel the way they do, and cope the way they cope, right? And then the Buddhist nun Pema Chodron says that when you see yourself going into those same habitual cycles, do something different. You have to have awareness that that's happening, right? Because
Hmm.
we already know that's not useful. That hasn't worked. That's why you're here, sitting here with me. So you have to change the dance and change the steps and do something different and understand. I think making those connections with our past, oh, I don't, not feeling heard because I never felt heard as a kid, and that's why this is so triggering for me. That's why this experience has so much valence, so much charge to it, because it's old, it's rooted in old stuff, and helping people gain awareness around that and making changes. Yeah.
Very often we find that one of the partners in the couple is a little more mature, a little more willing to change, a little
Mhm.
bit more willing to recognize patterns. What would you do? What would be your approach? And I know there are going to be people listening to this saying, well, I'm willing to change, but he's not or she's not. So I'll do all this pattern recognition and then it'll just come to a dead stop
Mhm.
when they keep doing the same old thing. And obviously, I'm a big proponent of telling people, well, you got to focus on yourself first. But what if it does get to that point
Yeah.
where that other person just isn't willing to be that self-aware?
Yeah. You're right. That definitely happens. Sometimes it's just an honest conversation. Joe, I see Sue making, Sue really made an effort here to make this change. And what I'm hearing is that no matter what happens, you're still going and you're still shutting down. You're still going. She's trying to calm her anger and calm her pursuit, but she feels really triggered. And
Hmm.
sometimes it's really having an honest conversation. I'm concerned.
Hmm.
If this doesn't change, then what? Right? If this doesn't change, what does that mean? Also, very importantly, and again, we talked in the pre meeting before we
Yeah.
started talking a little bit about the fact that I kind of weave mindfulness throughout the work that I do.
Yeah, absolutely.
And one of the questions that I always ask people when there is some dilemma of change, right? There is, okay, so you're a smart person. Most of the people I work with are very, intelligent, professional people.
Hmm.
Intellectually what we're asking. You see you're fully capable of understanding, and I believe that you really want to make a shift, but for some reason it doesn't happen. Like, what is the block? And in mindfulness, we say you be where you are. And if you are with a block, if you are with some sort of obstacle, then we have to open up and unpack the obstacle. What's there? What's between, here you're on this side of the river. There's a nice bridge to walk over. But for some reason, you stay on this side that's kind of cold and muddy. And you see over there, it's all nicely landscaped and there's a park and there's cute animals. And you stay over here and kind of like the side that is overgrown and not so comfortable,
Hmm.
because I think that's important too. So if you unpack that, right, what does that mean?
As
Yeah.
a teacher of mindfulness, as someone who lets that color everything that you do and let that inform everything that you kind of use in your guidance, can we just step back for a second and define mindfulness the way
Yeah.
you see it.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that and for your viewers. So, mindfulness is about being present in this moment, right here, right now. So, the people, for anyone listening or watching, to just be able to say, okay, right now, this is how it is for me right now. This is, oh, I feel a little bit of a feeling in my chest. Feel a little bit of, I feel the seat underneath me. I notice the light from the window right here, right? I have thoughts of, so what do I have to do? What is it that I have to do later? I think there's something I forgot, right? And just noticing what it's like right here, right now, right? And the one of the and let me also add to that, without judgment of whatever is here. I feel angry, not the I shouldn't feel angry, right?
Hmm.
And then if you say notice that you're saying that, to not judge the judging, right? And more importantly, oh, there's anger here. Well, it's hard to feel angry. Angry doesn't feel comfortable. It doesn't feel comfortable in my body. I feel my jaw is tightening. I feel my shoulders are tight. So really bringing compassion and a loving attention to whatever is being known. One of my teachers in the world of mindfulness, Jack Cornfield, calls mindfulness loving awareness, because there's the awareness and there's the loving attention that you bring to whatever is being known. And by the way, if anger is being known, that's actually, wow, how interesting. Let me open to this anger. Just like we would open to that block. Let me open to this anger. Maybe there's fear in that block, right? Maybe that block is, yeah, I know. I could be over there and I don't know why I don't do that. In the moment, I'm just so mad. I don't think I can. And maybe there's like, if I do walk over that bridge to the other side, maybe I'm going to be closer to my partner, but that feels scary because all my life I've maintained a comfortable distance. That's what works for me. And there's a little bit of a fear of crossing over that bridge because I'm more vulnerable.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
How does mindful meditation work? Is it the practice of closing your eyes, kind of being aware of your surroundings and just letting things kind of evolve? How long does it typically take a meditation session the way you teach it? Do you recommend having music or not? Kind of the
Yeah.
typical process of what that looks like.
Okay. So great question. So let me delineate first mindfulness and meditation.
Hmm.
Mindfulness,
Can happen anytime and all the time and should, right?
they're
Absolutely.
both awareness and no shoulds on it, but when you take that moment to stop and be present. I do that all day long. If I'm with a client, just even noticing how something feels. You can do it when you're eating, just slowly eating, taking in every experience, using your senses, right? You can do it while you're showering. You can do it really any walking out to your car and just noticing the temperature. How many times have you walked into a room and someone says, "Oh, what's it like out?" Me too, right? What's it like out? And you're like, I have no idea. I didn't pay attention. I don't remember if it was cold. I don't remember if it was the temperature unless something really felt strong, right?
Right. Right.
I don't even remember, right? And so we can incorporate that. Meditation is time that we set aside intentionally to practice mindfulness, right? So meditation is, for me, generally, I will sit for half an hour. I prefer quiet um, in meditation, but there is no right or wrong, right? It is time where you intentionally focus on being in the present moment. Do you have to close your eyes? I do, but you don't have to. You can just find a place to gaze, right? Very often, if I am guiding a meditation, I'll say you can close your eyes if you're comfortable. And if you're not, just find a place on the floor to look, because sometimes people, they don't want to close their eyes. That feels too vulnerable for them,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? It is not necessarily just sitting and having what we call an anchor. For example, maybe it's the breath. So you focus on the breath, you notice the breath, the in breath, what it feels like. You really, the nuance of the breath, one
Sure.
can use as an anchor. Um, the
Or a
mind,
mantra or something
or a
like that, right?
mantra, or the body. You can also use thoughts as an anchor. You can use the emotional
Mm,
experience. The body and the breath are very common anchors. The mind will wander. There is no such thing as an empty mind, right? No
yeah.
such thing. The mind will wander. And so we come, when we notice, oh, not with the breath, we come back to the breath. When we notice, oh, not with the body, we come back to the body. Sometimes we can mindfully notice thoughts about, worry about my family, worry about getting a job done, worry about this or that. Oh, noticing I'm tired, right? So we can also use that, as long as we are not in like reverie, where we're just sort of, that feeling where you're driving somewhere and all of a sudden you're like, how did I get here? Right. And
Mhm,
and your
mhm.
mind, you were so lost in reverie throughout the drive that you don't even know how you got from point A to point B.
Yeah, which is
And
what I call driving a car every single time.
yeah. Okay, yeah. So it's really very intentionally noticing what the thoughts are, what the experience is around those thoughts. Now, it doesn't have to be in a sitting meditation like that. You can do walking meditation, where you really are getting in touch with the body in each step and feeling the body move. There are all, you can intentionally sit and do an eating meditation. Spend your whole meal as an, or having, a cup of tea as a meditation, right? Um, so it is intentional time that is set aside for mindfulness. When I was on a silent retreat, we alternated an hour of sitting meditation, an hour of walking meditation, hour of sitting meditation, walking meditation.
How long was the silent retreat?
Well, the one I went on was like 10 days.
No talking for 10 days?
The only talking there was like every day or every other day we met with one of the teachers. There were some of the meditations that were guided, and there was sometimes a question and answer period. We were allowed to talk then. And for me, we all had a job to do to run the place. I went in, I said, I'm very good in the kitchen. Cooking is a passion of mine. So
Mhm.
I said, I'm good in the kitchen. So my job, everyone had a job. Some people cleaned, some people did the dishes in the kitchen. I helped prepare the dinner in the afternoon. So I would go in and chop all the vegetables and things like that. And uh, if we had questions there, we were allowed to talk. And of course, we were allowed to talk to process the experience with the teachers when we met with them. But other than that, it was completely silent.
How
Yeah.
did you find it? Did you enjoy it or?
I didn't mind the silence at all. It was probably one of the most I don't, life changing sounds so dramatic. I don't want to say that, but it was a
A
very
profound
powerful,
experience,
a
yeah.
very profound experience. Parts of it I hated. And I remember thinking when I was there, I hate this
Mhm.
and I know I'll be back. I hate
Really?
this and I know I'll come back and do it again. Yeah.
Have you gone back yet?
Not yet, because then the pandemic happened.
Yeah,
And I am actually thinking about it, though. I am wanting, it's almost like you're feeling that.
that pull, that
Yeah.
urge. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. So interesting. Well, let me shift gears a little bit here. You also offer sex therapy, and we see a lot of people have asked me I don't advertise myself as a sex therapist, not something I specialize in, but I do have clients who say when they're searching for different counselors or some help, they see this term of sex positive come up and they don't know what it is. And you've labeled yourself as someone who's sex positive. So before we
Yeah.
even get into the therapy, what does sex positive mean to you?
To me, sex positive means that there's absolutely nothing wrong with what your desires are or what you like to do, as long as it's between consenting adults. Because so many things in the field of sexuality are pathologized or, and judged and stigmatized. And, um, I've even been in groups of therapists who are like, what? Like who are not sex therapists. So if
Yeah.
somebody's into BDSM, right?
Hmm.
And they love to be, really what might look like to us to have painful stimuli applied to them.
Hmm.
People might walk away and say, "Oh, well, what's wrong with them?" But it's pleasurable for them. And there's nothing wrong with that. As long as there is consent between the two or more people that are engaging in that. And so for me, sex positive means de-shaming. Um, Also, it may not be in that kind of realm. Some people just have so much shame about sex. You think about how certain religions, especially the more extreme, sides of religions,
Yeah.
can um, say that sex is so bad and sex is terrible. And so to come in with someone who says no, 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 sex is normal, the desire for pleasure is normal, and there's nothing wrong with it. And oh, you like this? Okay, yeah, let's see how you can be helped to talk to your partner about what your desires are, right? So to really, so much of what I do is just de-shaming in that realm, like on uh, uh,
Hmm.
helping people to look at perhaps old messages they got that sex is bad or sex is dirty or
Hmm.
bodies are bad or
Or that
you
sex is only this way.
sex is only this way or you have to have sex to keep a man.
Mm.
That's what men want, so you have to just submit to that because all those messages people get around sex, and to come in and say, well, have you ever thought about what you like, what you enjoy, and how can this be actually be pleasurable for you, like a pleasurable experience?
So, as a therapist, when you practice sex therapy, it sounds like a lot of that is guiding your clients to, through that journey of exploration
Yeah.
to see what they really want from their sex life.
Yeah. And even more than that, it is a journey to understand how each person became the sexual being that they are. What are
Hmm.
the messages they got from their family, from their culture, from their community, from their friends? How does that inform their sexuality now? How do they imagine that informs them now? And sometimes that's a question that's very thought provoking. Oh, I never thought about that. Yeah, my church used to say X, Y, or Z. How does that's a message I got all the time. How does that
Hmm.
make me feel now? Or how does that inform what I do now?
I would assume that there are certain partners when these issues come up, there's some tension, there's some embarrassment, some shame. How do you help get through that part of it
Yeah.
so that they feel comfortable opening up and really going deep and really asking themselves, well, this is a good, healthy thing to do to explore this?
Yeah. I never would ever force anybody to say anything or tell me anything, sexual or not. If somebody doesn't want to tell me, I respect that. I
Yeah.
was like, that's okay. Like, I may talk about what it would mean to talk about it.
Hmm.
And I also, I have a comfort level discussing the whole area of sexuality. And I think just being able to be nonchalant and normalizing, and also validating that it can be hard to talk about, because it can be hard to talk about for people, right? And I get that. Like, look at how like much, if I'm in a group of people or something, they find out, you do sex therapy. And I'm like, yeah. They're like, oh, everyone comes over like, ooh, and I'm like, you know, um, because it is that kind of like, ooh, we could talk about sex here, like,
Right.
um, it, you know, so it's really just helping people. Like I would help them talk about what it was like for them to be bullied when they were a kid. That's hard
Hmm.
to talk about too, right? Those
Sure.
bringing up anything difficult, and for me, it's all just I think just approaching with compassion and validation and normalizing it all. Like, get it.
Hmm.
Of course, this is hard to talk about, especially like you always got a message that, sex was never talked about. You don't talk about that, or good girls don't,
Right.
or,
Which is very common. Yeah.
yeah,
In this country, at least. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And breaking through some of those barriers. Is it also sometimes difficult to navigate for couples when, their desires are so vastly different?
That can be an issue. So, there's one area, the most common reason couples come to sex therapy is discrepant desire. One
Yeah.
person wants sex more than the other. And then there's
More or
also,
different or something, right?
yeah, yeah. And then there's also different sexual styles. Like maybe one person isn't to BDSM and the other isn't.
Right.
Or they want to do certain things and the other person says, oh, I'm just not comfortable with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that is an exploration, right? And look, not everything that people may put on their sexual menu, just as when we get a menu of food, we don't necessarily want to eat everything or wouldn't eat everything that's on
Hmm.
the menu.
Right. Right. That's so funny. I like thinking of it as a menu. That's a good. I've heard it before, but I forgot. And there's a lot of good analysis. You could say, well, I could see some of my clients saying, well, I'm in and out. I do burgers, and that's it. You know.
Uh-huh. Well, would you like to put a little bit of some different toppings? How about some fried onions on
Right.
this burger, right? And
Right.
and
Right. Or there's a
and
secret menu, right? There's a secret
yeah.
menu.
Right, right. Yeah,
How fun.
yes,
So a
yeah,
lot of it is just kind of giving people the confidence to be who they really want to be at the end of the day and communicate it in a way that comes from a place of authenticity, non-judgmental. That's what I'm getting from you. I'm getting this sense of total acceptance, total, a celebration of your individuality from when I'm sitting with you. That's kind of who I get that you are at your core.
yeah, yes. And just like with the person we talked about before who won't cross over the bridge to the other side because there's a fear, right? There's also it's whether we're talking about sex, whether we're talking about somebody, and I mean, I don't really do like substance addictions. That's not my specialty.
Hmm.
But still, if let's say I'm working with a couple where there's substance use with somebody, right? And there's a dilemma of change around that, or there's or whether we're just I'm working with an individual and trying to understand why they're so anxious about some certain piece of in their life, right? It's really that whole relational family history and understanding. Well, oh, so the reason you feel so anxious when there's some sort of change going on is because there was this really abrupt shift in your life when you were a kid and you didn't know what was happening. And then that may transfer into somebody changes plans and they don't know why they feel anxious, right?
Hmm.
So there's the seminal book on trauma by Bessel van der Kolk is called The Body Keeps the Score, right? And
Yeah.
our body remembers trauma. So sometimes traumas with big T's, traumas with little t's. And so sometimes we feel a certain way, but our body is actually reacting to a past memory, even though something completely different content is happening in the present. Our body is remembering that experience that's underneath it.
Yeah.
And yeah.
It's a fantastic book. I think it's like at the top of the bestseller week after week for a reason.
Oh, is it really? I didn't know
Yeah,
that. Yeah.
yeah. It's fantastic. And the nonfiction, kind of mental health section.
Yeah.
It's one of the top that's been there for years and years. So
Yeah.
thank you for reminding people. Well, Wendy, you've been an absolute pleasure, super insightful,
Oh,
and
thank
I'm
you so
I'm
much.
so grateful for the wisdom you've shared. People can find you on Facebook and Twitter at Wendi Dumbroff. That's WendiDumbroff. Anywhere else they can
Yeah,
kind of
I don't know if
discover you?
My Twitter might be Wendi Dumbroff Therapy, but I'm terrible with social media. Then there's a Facebook too, and my website wendydumbroffTherapy.com. It's Wendy with an I, not with a Y. So.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being here. It was an absolute pleasure. Thank you. If you're interested in learning how to get the absolute most out of your romantic relationships, then you're in luck, because I have put together a free workshop, or masterclass, if you will, about 3 secrets that people in happy relationships have discovered. You can view the workshop at mrspirituality.com/3secrets. Again, it's completely free. Just go there and watch it. It'll help you on your journey, give you some wisdom, some things to think about. The website again is mrspirituality.com/3secrets. That's mrspirituality.com/3, the word secrets. It's all yours. Enjoy.